Hey there, it's Coach Cole here, and welcome to Leadership Lessons. Today I want to share a really quick lessons in relation to questions. Now, having the skill to ask great questions is something that all leaders should aspire to, because asking great questions allow us to create greater buy-in, build trust, and get greater rapport. But often as a leader, we feel compelled to tell and direct. And sometimes that's because we may have a belief that we have the answer, or we have the belief that we should have the answer. But asking questions is a really great way to get buy-in from your team and allow your team to share their thoughts and opinions. But we know that questioning, and especially great questioning, are often challenging for leaders and business owners. Why is that? Now, there's many reasons, and I'm going to recite the 5 enemies of great questions, and this was outlined by Warren Berger in his book called The Book of Beautiful Questions. The 5 enemies of great questions. Number 1, fear. So think back as best you can to when you were a small child, or potentially you're a parent and you've got a small child. You were no doubt so curious, so inquisitive that you would ask questions all day. And then what happens? As we get older, we gradually stop asking. We gradually stop. Until about teenage age, in that teenage era for ourselves, when a lot of our own questions are directed inward and not outward, we stop asking questions. So why do we stop? And it's fear. The fear of looking bad, the fear of asking the wrong question, the fear of not looking cool. Maybe it's been an upbringing of people suggesting that maybe they were dumb questions that you were asking. So the fear of asking questions is number 1 on the list of the 5 enemies of asking great questions. Now, unless we get over that fear, we will always struggle in this particular area of leadership. So we need to think about, reflect back on ourselves, and when can you use questioning instead of potentially just that old tell and do. But also think back in all the areas of your life. What are those areas that you will be able to gain some benefit of when you start asking great questions? You know, personal relationships, family matters, business, career. The number 2 enemy is knowledge. Now, as we actually accumulate knowledge, the more we know, the more we believe we know, and the less curious we become. Now, isn't that interesting? The more we know, generally, the more we believe we know, and the less curious we become. Now, this can be critical, as especially now, the world is moving so quick. So imagining what sort of damage can be done by maintaining the status quo of our knowledge, or believing that the knowledge that we have is enough, while the world continues to change so quick. The dynamic nature of the world should actually be really forcing us or challenging us to ask better questions, to ask great questions. So how do we effectively grow our knowledge is for us to understand, so that we have to be open to growth. Because if we allow our current level of knowledge to be the determinant for us in this dynamic world, we're going to start going backwards. Number 3 and number 4 go hand in hand. We've got bias and we've got hubris. Now, everyone's got our own biases, and these are usually conditioned on how we're brought up. It's what we read, it's what we watch, it's what we listen to. We've got our view of the world, we've got our perspective, we've got our agreement with reality. And our bias will challenge us when it comes to asking questions, because often, instead of being curious and asking questions, often we'll just align ourselves with what our perspective is, what our agreement with reality. And hubris is just the concept that we think that we're right, that we think that our biases, that our view of the world is right. And what that often means is that everyone else must be wrong. So bias and hubris go hand in hand in the enemies of good questions. Now, the last one is time. And this, once again, it's time or the lack of time, or our perception of the lack of time. Now, this can be really damaging. We all are urgent to complete tasks. We're all urgent to get outcomes. And we often have this mistaken belief that taking time to ask questions, even though that may build trust, rapport, and get alignment to the outcome that we're all wanting to get, is just too much trouble. I don't have the time to do that is what we'll often tell ourselves. And we'll resort back to the tell and direct, the tell and do aspects. Let's get this done. This is what we've got to do. Instead of taking the time to build the base by asking some really great questions. But I can rest assured that the time taken to ask great questions will absolutely be proven time and time again to be a great investment of your time, because the better questions you ask, the better the buy-in, the better the alignment, the better the outcome. So that's your leadership lesson for this week. The 5 enemies of great questioning. Just to go through them again: the fear, our own knowledge is an enemy, our bias and our hubris, and finally our perspective of the lack of time that we have. So take a quiet moment during the end of this week and just reflect on those 5 enemies of great questions, and really ask yourself which are the ones that you need to work on to help you ask great questions and in turn become a better leader. Thanks for tuning in to Leadership Lessons. I'm Coach Cole. I will see you all again next week. Bye for now.